One. One. Hello, people! 5 minutes. Hello, people! 5 minutes. Right, let's take our seats, please. Now I'm nervous. Right, guys. Hello. Let's settle down. Burning daylight. Perfect timing. Good evening. I would like to welcome you all to our third Many Hats meetup, second in London, and my first time hosting a meetup. So please excuse me if I forget about something. Yes, it's very nice to see you all here. It's pretty fantastic that you all made your way here, and we hope that you will enjoy this in the evening. We would like to thank our hosts, the Camelot, for hosting us here, and I hope we will have a fantastic evening with them. And we have, so first of all, who we are, in case you don't know, the Many Hats Club. So we are a community of information security people, and we welcome absolutely everyone for all walks of life. We are a community of thousands of members, literally 3,000 at the moment, but we are still growing. And yeah, we aim at all skill levels. So if you are new to this industry, you just want to find your way into this industry, please join. There are so many people who want to help you there, and many people already have found their jobs just by sticking around us. So yes, please join us and have a great evening. And tonight we're gonna have three talks and 4 speakers. First on the deck will be Jay Harris, who will be talking about, I can't remember this stuff, attacking wireless communications with low-cost SDRs. And after that, there will be like 40 minutes talk, right? Something like that. After that, we're gonna have a short break and for food, if there's any left. And after that, we're gonna have Sharka talking about social engineering, and the title is Pirate Queen Techniques to Social Engineer Her Targets, which is pretty awesome, actually. And then again, 40 minutes, slightly break, and then a talk from our hosts about DevSecOps and about cloud from David and Francesco, and role of security architect in a DevSecOps environment, cloud or not. So without wasting more daylight, please welcome Jay Harris and his SDR talk.
Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Okay, awesome. So we have a bit of a problem in terms of where I'm going to stand. I don't want to block out the screen, but I need to be able to use my laptop to do some demonstrations. So if I... Well, the cable isn't that long. Okay. I mean, we'll figure it out. Okay. So yeah, I'm here to talk to you today about software-defined radio. So this is a topic that I'm quite interested in, and hopefully by the end of this talk, you guys will be as well. So it's also quite a demo-heavy talk. We are in London. There are lots of radio waves around that can interfere with things. Also, hardware can go wrong. So fingers crossed that it all works out okay. Okay, so does anyone know what this stuff here on the screen is? Yeah, okay. So, oh, you can't see. Yeah, okay, so we've got an oscilloscope. And we got some wireless ICDs, so kind of like pacemakers and defibrillators. There were some attacks against some of this equipment a few years back, where using software-defined radio, they were able to interface with some of this hardware and get it to do things it shouldn't do. Well, technically to do things it should do, but at a time when it shouldn't be doing them. For example, these pacemakers, they apply electricity to the heart. So if we can start to interact with these using radio signals, there's a potential that we can do some serious damage. Things like cars have a lot of radio devices in them as well. So if you just take a standard car, nowadays you have things like keyless entry, that's obviously using radio technology. There's even the FM radio inside it. There's wireless tire pressure sensors. And if we have a way to be able to interface with those wireless technologies, we have a way of possibly being able to take over at least some parts of the car. And again, there are some quite cool attacks on real-world devices. So yeah, even something like a car, has lots of attack vectors when it comes to radio. And we have things like this. Has anyone heard of Tempest before? Yeah, so Tempest, a really cool attack where we can use kind of unintentional transmissions of radio signals. So when data travels down a wire, it will give off some kind of electromagnetic interference. And if we can control radio waves and we can tap into that, we can actually start to recover data that's sent over some of these wires. So in this case, it's data that's sent over the cable, the video cable between a computer and a monitor. And we can pick up those signals and start to see what's on the screen. So just quickly, who am I? Jay Harris, Jamal Harris, some people know me as Jay. I'm a pen tester and researcher at Digital Interruption. And I'm interested in mobile. I do a lot of radio stuff and reverse engineering. Some Twitter accounts I think you should follow. So Jay Harrisek, obviously. Manchester Grey Hat, so this is a group I run in Manchester where we put on workshops. So we've done workshops on SDR, we've done workshops on basic web application hacking, like all kinds of stuff. And so we live stream a lot of our events, and we run CTFs and things like that. And then DI security for a lot of the research we put out there. So we're going to look at a few different things. An introduction to software-defined radio. We're going to look at attacks on some radio systems. We're going to see how we can start to identify some of the signals so we can start to reverse engineer them. And then we're going to look at some of the attacks that's been possible on some more common wireless protocols. If anyone has any questions, by the way, feel free to just ask. So let's start with an introduction to SDR. So this here is more of a traditional radio, a hardware-based radio. So we have an antenna, we have things in the middle, and eventually the hardware will demodulate, as in it will remove the data from the radio signal and then do something with it. In this case, in the case of very simple like FM radio, it will just transmit it to the speaker, right? So we can tune into a radio station we want to listen to, and noise or music will come out of our speaker. So one of the advantages of this kind of thing is that it's really, really cheap. I'm sure people have been, just to a pound shop, for example, and you can find radios there that, for like hardly any money. They're really, really cheap to produce, but they only ever do one thing, right? So if you take a Wi-Fi card, it's only ever going to be a Wi-Fi card. That's what it's designed to do. That's what it does, because it's in the hardware. Compare that to software-defined radio. So software-defined radio is a little bit different. It basically consists of an analog to digital converter, and then digital to analog converter when we're going from the computer to the air. So for transmitting, but for receiving, it consists of the analog to digital converter. And what it does is it takes the data from the air and then it demodulates it within software, right? So we have a device here where we can just take data and we choose how we demodulate it. We say, this is an FM radio station. Let's demodulate it like that. This is the signal for Wi-Fi. Let's demodulate it like that. So yeah, so we're able to kind of apply digital signal processing into the field of radio really, really easily. So yeah, why is SDR so interesting? Well, I think it gives us the tools we need to perform assessments of kind of arbitrary radio signals, which is, I think, really, really cool. So just some quick examples of some software-defined radios. Now, this slide is a little bit out of date, but it should give you kind of an idea. So we have some slightly more expensive pieces of equipment. So you're looking up to like £1,000. This lets you do things like full duplex, so transmit and receive at the same time. Quite high sample rates, a lot of bandwidth. Honestly, for a lot of the cases, I don't need any of that. So the kind of the middle range, something like a Hack RF1. So that's this device here. Fairly cheap. You know, we're looking at £200. You know, buy one secondhand, probably get it a little bit cheaper. So it's a bit more limited compared to the more expensive ones. So we can only do half duplex. So we can only receive or send. We can't do both. But again, for a lot of stuff that I do, I have a device I want to look at. I want to receive some data and analyze that data and then transmit it again. So for a lot of my use case, half duplex is fine. And then right on the cheaper end, we've got kind of these £10 SDRs. Let me just show you one if you've not seen one before. So that's this kind of thing here, right? So £10. And actually, this is kind of interesting. This technically is a TV tuner, right? So you plug into your laptop, you can watch TV on your laptop. Somebody realized when they were using this that actually what was happening is it was taking the signal and actually demodulating it within the software. And they thought, hey, what happened if I just change the software to do something else? And that's how this kind of craze of SDR happened, because these things super, super cheap. So EMF, so radio transmissions, fall within a massive spectrum. With SDR, realistically, we're only looking at a little bit. We're looking at kind of this part here in the radio TV waves. But again, a lot of stuff is happening there. This much stuff tends to be happening there. We don't need to see the details, but we can see that there is a lot of things going on. And if we have the ability to tune into some of these devices and play with some of these protocols, we can start to do some pretty cool attacks. So just some basic technologies you guys are probably fairly familiar with. So things like Bluetooth, obviously, Zigbee, LTE, GSM, LoRaWAN is one that's popular at the moment. So all these things that use these technologies, and then we have lots of devices like these. So these are just kind of standard off-the-shelf bits of kit. We have things like wireless doorbells, wireless alarm systems, wireless keyboards. I bought a wireless keyboard from Sainsbury's, what was it, maybe a year ago or something? And it's vulnerable to a lot of the attacks we're going to see today. Things like walkie-talkies as well. Now these things are cool. Has anyone seen these before? Yeah, so these are the IMEs. They're effectively they're toys for kids. The service does not work anymore, so these things were going on eBay for super, super cheap. And so it's not a software-defined radio, it's more like a software configurable radio. And if you take one of these devices, so the actual, what they're used for is actually kind of interesting. So a kid uses it, they send like a text message to their friend, and it sends the message from the device to a USB receiver that's plugged into a laptop or computer. And then the message goes over the internet to their friend's device, who goes from the USB transmitter to their IME. And as I said, the web service went down, so these things stopped working. And actually, if you change the firmware on it, you can actually get it to do some really cool stuff. So there are some videos online of people using it to, for example, use it as a spectrum analyzer, so walking around and viewing radio signals. Also using it to open garage doors. So imagine a hacker walking around with a bright pink toy, press a button, garage door starts opening. They spray painted their army colors, making it a bit more hacker-like, I guess. So I really like this quote. Security won't get better until tools for practical exploration of the attack surfaces are made available. And we saw this with Wi-Fi, right? So if you remember when Wi-Fi first became popular, it was fairly hard to start playing with it. Then we started to get some tools that allowed us to really, really start to probe Wi-Fi. And then WEP was broken, right? So it wasn't until we had the tools to start really probing things that we were able to really break stuff. So yeah, I think this quote really captures why some of these devices are so interesting. So let's go for the first demo. Do I sit down? Yeah, I'm gonna sit down here. So hopefully we can see everything. So this is the first bit of software that I tend to use when I'm playing with radio. This is called GQRX. There's lots of different versions or similar software, depending on whether you use a Windows or Linux or whether you want to pay for it or not. I really, really like GQRX. It's open source. It works really, really well. So what I'd want to do, for example, is let's press play and hope. Okay, so we can see that we've turned our SDR. I've got one of the cheap Realtek dongles, so the TV tuners effectively plugged in. Press play, and we can see we can start seeing some signals, right? Let's tune in on one and see if we can figure out what it is. Maybe, is there sound on this thing? No, okay. Let's see if I can have it come out my laptop. I think it's loud enough. Everyone can hear that, right? Yeah. So we can see here that we've just playing some radio using our SDR. Now, just realize that what we're doing is we're taking an arbitrary signal and we're demodulating it using GQRX. GQRX knows how to demodulate FM radio. Okay, so that's pretty interesting, but realistically, we can just turn on like the radio if we want to do this. So let's try and do something a bit different. Let's tune up to some different frequencies. So this is 609.775. Hello? Oh. Okay, so it doesn't really, maybe, no, it doesn't really seem to be picking up this. Maybe it's, I don't know, stuff happening. Okay, let's go back down to something else. So usually there's some good things around here. So sometimes we just need to wait a little bit and hopefully we see something cool. Okay, so that was something. You see this here? Oh, maybe this one as well. And now this isn't an audio transmission like we heard before, like FM radio. This is actually going to be some digital signal, right? You can almost hear the ones and zeros. And if we look here, we can actually see those ones and zeros being transmitted through the air. So does anyone know what this actually is, by the way? Yeah. What is it? Exactly. So pager systems. So you can actually use some other software to start to demodulate this and read the paging systems, the data that's going through the air. So we can see that fairly easily we can start to probe things. And again, we can kind of see the ones and zeros, which is really cool. Yeah, I wanted to show you this. This is quite cool. I'm not going to do a live demo of this one because it tends to be a bit flaky, but I do have a video. Okay, so I recorded this video quite a while back, so you can see how old some of this software is. I don't just use software that's several years out of date. So this is something called, yeah. So what this really is aircraft, right? As they're flying, they transmit their location and their latitude, their longitude, and their numbers and things like that. And so we can actually use the software here to listen in on that. And that's what we're mapping here. So we just, as it comes into our SDR, we can start to just display it on screen. So I forget where, I think I was in London when I recorded this. I mean, you can see some pretty cool stuff. And then what we can do is plot that onto a map, which is kind of interesting to see. Yeah, so I must have been in Manchester when I recorded this. That makes sense. So again, that's just using one of these cheap £10 SDRs. In fact, let's just have a quick scroll through and see if we can see anything kind of interesting. I've heard, for example, I was playing around with this and I heard my neighbors, I don't know what they were using, some kind of headphone, wireless headphone or something, I don't know. But I heard one half of a conversation. I also, this other time I was scrolling through and I saw this little blip and I clicked on it and I didn't hear anything. I thought that's a bit weird. And then my friend who was sitting next to me said something and then I heard it. I was like, what the heck, we got a bug. There's a bug in here. It turns out that actually the laptop itself was transmitting that. Yeah, kind of a weird thing. So what I think it actually was is the connection on the microphone as it was receiving some data was just putting it back in the air. Unintentionally, didn't mean to do it. It was just doing it. Because I disabled the microphone, removed drivers and everything, and I could still hear us in the room. So they're kind of cool to just kind of scan around and see what kind of things are going on. So I've heard taxi drivers as well. One thing that you'll probably see is, especially when you've got like your device plugged into the mains and stuff, you see just loads of like spikes, and that's just interference from, yeah, so this will be probably FM radio again, yeah. Okay, enough of that. Okay, so we've seen how easy it is to kind of tune into some of these things. Let's look. Do people mind if I just stay seated? No? Okay. So like everyone can like hear me and okay, cool. So yeah, let's look at attacking some of these systems. We've seen how easy it can be to just tune into them and listen and see what's going on. Okay, what about some attacks? So the first obvious one to try is a replay attack. So this is where so if we have an example where somebody presses a button on their remote to open up their garage door, for example. So they press the button, the door opens, right? Makes sense. So we as the attacker are here with our software-defined radio, and we've captured that signal. And now we just replay that exact same thing, and hopefully we'll see the garage door open. Now, it's not quite as simple as that in a lot of cases. There are some protection mechanisms. There are things like encryption. Although if you think about a replay attack, you don't always need to be able to decrypt the data, right? So there have been some attacks on wireless keyboards where they, the keys are encrypted, but they don't change each time. So, I mean, the key presses are encrypted, but they don't change each time. So you can just build up almost a table of, okay, this encrypted value is this actual value. So even if the data is encrypted, sometimes a replay attack is still useful. Then there are protections like rolling codes, right? So this is where the clicker and the door has a code that changes each time the clicker is pressed. This can protect against replay attacks because the code changes each time. But again, there are some attacks against that. One really cool one that that Sammy came up with was so someone comes along and they press a button to like open their car door or something, and you jam that signal. Then they press it a couple more times, right? Because that's just what people do. Press it a few more times. You continue to jam, and then you save those signals, those codes that you've collected, and then you let the first one through. And now you have saved a kind of a selection of the next types of codes, the next codes that will be in use. So even if the person drives away and parks up, you can then just use the next code in the sequence to unlock the device. The other attack is like brute forcing. There are some pretty cool brute force attacks against rolling codes.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Who is Sammy?
Sammy, he's a awesome hacker. Sammy Kamkar. Check him out on YouTube if you've not seen him. He came up with the Sammy worm, like the MySpace worm years ago. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, honestly, the stuff that the guy does is just amazing. He has a really good knack for taking kind of people's research, stuff that is really complex, and presenting it in a really simple way and showing you like real world attacks. So people were talking about some of these radio things before he came along, and it was kind of theoretical but there are these protections, etc. And he came along and just showed you, well, actually, you can totally steal cars using these things. Yeah, exactly.
Just today on BBC.
Yeah.
Tesla just got nicked because they still use the off-the-shelf random crap.
Yeah. Yeah, some cars, they won't even use rolling codes. They still use just the same value each time. Sometimes when you have like gates that are used by lots and lots of people, a rolling code just isn't really practical. So in those situations, they tend to use the same like static code as well. So what about things like data recovery? That's another valid attack, and we saw some of that before. So actually, with some of these radio systems now, we're able to tune in, and we can almost pick the data that's traveling through the air. If it's not encrypted, it's fairly easy to recover. I mentioned before things like Tempest, right? But then there are other applications. I saw a really good talk. It was at DEF CON a few years back by someone called Melissa Elliott, and she was showing how it's possible to track people. So everyone has a unique configuration of devices on them. I carry like my phone, and I usually have like a work phone or something. But other people probably not gonna have the same types of configurations on them. Someone else might have a Nintendo DS and an iPhone, and someone else has whatever. So, at least in an area. So you can almost detect what type of device people have on them just by the kind of things they're emitting. And if we can tune into that, we can start to track people around rooms. I've seen people also using it for like kind of seeing through walls as well. So Wi-Fi, as it bounces around the room, leaves shadows, and we can use SDR to tune into those shadows and kind of display a picture of what's happening on the other side of the room. Denial of service, obviously. If we can transmit radio signals, we can start to deny service to people. Imagine the case of kind of first responders. If we can stop the call to them coming out, things like all these jamming attacks, and but then also if we start looking at kind of higher level protocols. So with GSM, we might be able to inject traffic and take things down, and we have a way of really interacting with the devices. So we can do jamming attacks and just kind of overwhelm the airwaves, or we can actually start to target things by sending them data that they might not expect, or data that causes crashes and stuff. And then, of course, we have something, fuzzing. So fuzzing should be a technique that I imagine most people here are familiar with, but with fuzzing, we send data to the device and wait for it to do something, usually to crash. It's going to be malformed data. So, if we have the ability to set up our own GSM base station, for example, using software-defined radio, we have an ability to start to fuzz mobile phones and the baseband chips. And this is traditionally be things that have been quite difficult for us to do. So whereas before we might only be able to access some of these top layers, so the application layer, etc. Now, since we actually can control the data going through the air, we can start to fuzz some of these lower layer stuff. And actually, some like OpenBTS is some software to actually create mobile base stations, and they have a fuzzing feature built into that, which is pretty cool. So let's look at another demo. I have with me a wireless doorbell. Now this is one I actually bought yesterday. So if I press the button, not that button, a different button. This button. Okay, so press the button, the doorbell rings, right? So let's, what I'd like to show you is how easy it can be to perform a replay attack on something like this. So there's this really great piece of software called GNU Radio Companion. And it lets us create software, basically, using this drag and drop interface. So let me just disable this one, actually. So what we've got here is we've got two blocks. We have this Osmocom source, which is our software-defined radio. And we have a waterfall sync. So this takes the data from the Osmocom source, so from the source here, and then just displays it on the screen. And we've set it up in a way, so we've given it a frequency. So let's put that to so we're tuning this into 433 megahertz, and press play. And so we can see here, right? So now we're just seeing some data that's going through the air. Okay, so what we can see is that we press the button and some things happened, and we can see that. But that's quite similar to what we had with GQRX, right? I mean, we basically just recreated GQRX, but badly. So let me actually just try and, I had that as 0.8 before, I think. Why? Let's just see if that comes up a bit better. Yeah, okay. So you can see there. So what my normal process is I use GQRX to find the signal because it's easier to scan, and then I might use GNU Radio. So rather than it going into just the waterfall sync, let's actually put it into a file sync as well. So it's going to the screen and we can display it, but then we're also just going to save that signal directly into a file. I guess this file name is fine. So basically we just give it a file name here. And if we press play, press the button. Now we've taken that signal and we've put it inside a file. So we have the Osmocom source and the file sync. So let's actually just swap those around. let's take a file source and an Osmocom sync, okay? And what we can do is we can just match these up. So these ones are darker because I've just disabled them. So that means they're not going to really run. Let's put this into the waterfall as well. Let's put this at the right frequency. Oops. So I'm just matching the frequency here, and I'm just going to put the same file name that we saved that signal into. And hopefully, my heart is pounding. Oh, actually, that is not going to work because this device here doesn't support transmitting. So I'm going to take this out. So this is the cheap £10 one. And now I'm going to move over to my HackRF. So I'm just going to record it again. So just disable these. Enable that. So by the way, preparing for this talk with other people around, they get really, really annoyed at you. So let's try and disable. And also, you need to kind of be a bit careful because when you're doing this kind of work, you are just capturing data that's in the air. Hopefully nothing bad happens when you replay it, but you can never really be sure. So the thing you should really do is start to filter it and only like look at the signal that you're interested in, but let's see if this works. Yeah, okay, cool. So we performed just a very simple replay attack on the doorbell. Now we could just leave that playing, which would be kind of fun. But we're actually gonna, we can take it one step further. Let's try and do some other cool stuff. But for now, you can just see, to do a very simple replay attack, we literally just create the signal and put it into a file, and then we take the file and put it into the device. So any questions, or does that make sense? Yeah, oh, awesome. Okay, so we have a way of capturing signals, which is like really awesome and lets us do lots of things, but we actually want to start to identify them. That lets us really look at how we can start to reverse engineer some of these wireless devices and these wireless protocols. So when we're looking at fairly kind of cheap consumer hardware like these doorbells, also wireless alarm systems, also garage door openers, those kind of things, they tend to use one of two types of modulation schemes. So on-off keying is the first one, right? So OOK it's called. And this is where data is encoded in the amplitude or the loudness of a signal. So basically, the device will transmit, then not transmit, then transmit, then not transmit, very, very quickly. When it transmits, it's a 1, and where it doesn't, it's a 0. So this is OOK, which is the simplest form of amplitude shift keying, so ASK. So yeah, OOK, we have a way of saying, okay, if we want to send a 1, then transmit some data. If you want to send a 0, then don't transmit anything. So if we start to look at this, it kind of looks like this. And we saw this in the graph earlier, right? Where we could see the thing is just sending kind of 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. And if we look at this, we can actually start to kind of read the bits. So the other thing is FSK. And we saw that when we was looking at the POXAG stuff, so the paging systems before. So this is where it encodes data in the frequency of the signal. So it transmits a 1 frequency for a 1, and then another frequency for a 0, and then jumps between the two. And I really like this one because you can see as the signal changes between kind of a high frequency, low frequency, how it's encoding the 1s and 0s. And And again, we get a chance, we can, if we look at this, we can start to read it 10, 10, 10. So let's look at actually trying to do that. So we don't need, so you can do it in GQRX, in GNU Radio, right? It's really, really, really hard. So I don't do it that. I tried a couple of times, and honestly, things like get weird. Things start to shift, get out of sync. You think, oh man, that should definitely be a 1, and that you're getting a 0 written to disk. So I kind of gave up using it, using GNU Radio for that. And I really like this tool called InSpectrum. So we saw that we had saved the file earlier, right? So we've saved this file to disk from the software-defined radio. So I'm just going to open up InSpectrum. I could go forever, to be honest. How much longer do I have?
7 minutes.
7, that's fine. So I think it was this one we saved. Yeah. So let's look at InSpectrum. So, I mean, honestly, this talk is a fairly long talk, and I will just cut out the end, so it's not really too much of an issue. Okay, so using InSpectrum, we can actually look at look at the file that we've captured, and we can see the 1s and 0s going through the air. And so we know by looking at this, the fact that it seems to be encoding data in using the loudness of the sound, that is going to be OK. So what we can do is we actually look at this and we can write it down if we want. And actually, this is a fairly easy signal. We can see that it's really, I mean, it's basically just repeating itself, isn't it? This is missing a kind of a bit at the front, but effectively it's all the same thing. Now, this is because it's a very cheap piece of kit. And what it actually does is it knows that it's very cheap and unreliable, so it just sends the same signal lots and lots of times. And that's why we're seeing so many signals here, even though I just pressed the button once. So these are the 1s and 0s, which is cool. With InSpectrum, we can actually do something. We can actually extract those bits from the air. So what we can do is we can add an amplitude plot. So we say we want to just pull out the loudness of the signal. And then we can say a threshold plot. So if it's above a certain amount, it's a 1, and if it's below that, it's a 0. And that's what this graph here is. Okay, but still very visual. And then we can actually do this, right? We can say this is a symbol. So it's 1 symbol, and then we say 2 symbol, 3 symbol, 4 symbol, 5 symbol. Okay, readjust it a little bit. And then just keep going up. Because sometimes it can be it just kind of gets a little bit out of sync, but that's not a problem. We can just readjust it. Okay. And then if we right click, and then extract symbols to standard out or to clipboard if we want. If we do this to, let's do it to clipboard, and then we can just paste that into a text file, and then we have the 1s and 0s, right, as they've been sent to the air. And now we have what was sent over radio in software, and reversing software is so much easier. Okay, so the other little trick that I want to show you guys, which is, now this is something that I've only done recently. There's this other piece of software. Called Universal Radio Hacker. Guess what it does? So with this, we can actually say open, so documents, and then we have SDR. So I think it was this file here. So let's open that. It's an ASK file, and it actually gives us all the 1s and 0s. And then we can say, let's look at the hex of that. And so now we actually see the bytes that are going through the air. I've got a second doorbell button in my bag, Had there been time, we would have looked at the same thing again, but with the other one, and see that it's actually a different signal that's being sent, or parts of it are different. But now we have the ability to actually see the data. Unfortunately, I won't have time to demo this, but at this point, what I would do is I would take this device here. Now, this is a yardstick one. And again, it's more of a software configurable radio. So we can say in software, we want you to use on-off keying, and we want you to transmit at this frequency, at this rate, and we want you to transmit these bytes. And then we could get the doorbell to ring again. The difference is, we're not just replaying a random signal, we're creating the signal again based on the bytes we've detected. So using that would be very easy to start to brute force other wireless doorbells, or to change the values and start to change the bits that are going through the air. How much longer? A few more minutes? Or? Yeah. Just to wrap up. So any questions about that? No? Okay, cool. So we will skip this part, but if you're interested, speak to me later. There are attacks against more common kind of protocols such as GSM. We can use SDR to create malicious base stations, sniff traffic. It's vulnerable to crypto attacks. Bluetooth Low Energy has issues where keys are just can be cracked if we have certain bits of data. And Zigbee as well. Oftentimes that just transmits the key in plain text. As a new node enters the network, the key just gets distributed. So if we can capture that key, or if we can actually capture one of the devices, we can pull the key off it and then start to interact with the network. So, so effectively, with SDR, we're able to turn a setup that used to look like this, used to look like lots of purpose-built bits of hardware, into something like this, one device and one laptop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was pretty. And actually, you pray to demo gods because all your demos work. So, it's a good vibes. Right. So we're gonna have like 7 minutes break to spread around, have some pizza or some beer, and then we're gonna have Sharka talking about social engineering. Thank you. Right then, thank you for sticking up. That was a great talk by Jay. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and I hope the next one will be just as awesome. Just someone reminded me that I forgot to actually mention who we are and like personally and who's here. So we have Stu, obviously, right there, hiding in the background. Yes, the fearless leader of this community. Wave, yeah, give a wave. So we also have Toffee. Hiding in the background as well, and Pizza doing the audio streaming, and I'm Meadow, and we help to make this thing happen. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Sharka talking about social engineering.
Okay, so who came to see social engineering tales or here? Okay, so you failed. You're a social engineer because it's not going to be really about stories. It's more my research, and to support the research, I'll be telling some stories, so don't worry. And it's okay. So, what you will hear tonight, I'm hoping, a little bit for everyone, so it focuses mainly, because I come from the offensive side, so it focuses mainly on the offensive side, but there will be a little bit for those who are going against me, really. But I'm gonna give you some tip how to stop me. So yeah, my name is Sharka. Sharks here by Grace, lots of different names. People call me Saskia as well, but yeah. In my free time, I do kendo. It's a Japanese martial art, not with sticks, but with swords. Some people just keep making fun of me. Then the nights are spent hacking, mainly on bug bounty platforms as HackerOne. Before my life was completely taken over by all the hacking, I was doing lots of in music. So this is from the last gig that I had. And even on a live stage during the gig, you just find me at the back of the stage behind the computer screen, of course. I'm really big on a community, so you can find me at Manchester as one of the OWASP organizers. I am ambassador for B-Sides in Athens, and I'm co-founder of the DEF CON group in Paris. If anyone here is interested either sponsoring or talking, just let me know. I also have a last little project that I'm working on with Chrissy, who is somewhere in the back. So I'll talk about it a little bit later. And that was all of it was in a free time. So in my actual, not free time when I work at SureCloud as a pen tester. And it was here where I came for the interviews, and I kept saying, I'll be great for social engineering, please give me the chance. So my boss called me and was like, so what would you say your first job ever will be actually going into? You have 2 days, 3 offices. I'm like, okay, let's try. And the first day I walked out into the server room and walked out with a laptop and some sensitive documents. So I guess that I was right. So Grace O'Malley, she's the real pirate queen. I mean, I'm real too, but she was real in the 16th century. She was super badass, and she actually even got to meet the queen. Because I think that she kidnapped someone from her family. But yeah, so this is the 21st century Grace O'Malley. And she does some cool stuff as well. And I haven't met Queen yet. She gets into places, breaks into buildings. This one is actually from one of my lovely clients. It's on their SharePoint. I think so people don't think that the person that broke in there, it's my actually real life, maybe go after me, I don't know. So, what's social engineering originally? It's a political science where I'm guessing it started as a good idea, as usually it does with the bad ideas. It was, I think it was 1890s, and they were thinking, so all those people, all those engineers that are taking care of all the machinery, what about them? We need to take care of them as well. So let's bring in the social engineers, and there will be the people that will be taking care of them. Then it went, of course, bad, because that meant to be a mass manipulation of people, and it was used in lots of authoritarian systems like Soviet Union, China, or during Khmer Rouge genocide in Cambodia. So I think this is how it looks like these days. That's what you can, if you look a little bit in detail around you, you will see a lot of social engineering happening these days. But what is social engineering as we know it here in this room, probably? Some people think that it's really cool. Some people not so much. But I would say it's more lots of Googling, lots of gathering OSINT, lots of courage, studying people's facial expressions and body language. So you can find me lots of times in like a corner of the bar, and I'm just watching people like, what faces are they doing? Oh, the couple looks strange, like her feet is pointing like somewhere else. So yeah, well, that's me. But I guess that it helps me with my job. So social engineering is, of course, more than that, but for my social engineering engagement, I put them into, let's say, 3 phases. During the pre-phase, it's the one that you're doing remotely, so it's like a phishing, wishing, all the ishings. It's also gathering your OSINT for your pretext to get to know your target. Then the action phase is the one where you're interacting with the target directly, where you're manipulating them based on what you gathered before. The third one, lots of people call it or behave like it's get domain admin and get out, which I don't like. I think it's not only about that. You need to, if you're gathering your OSINT, you have to know what's the company that you're trying to get into. What's the, I don't know, is it a financial company? So you need to target the financial department. You need to get there and get some sensitive documents from there. So I think we should be more thinking about that. Of course, getting domain admin is very important and it's very helpful, but we can do more than this. But for this talk, I want to, or in general, because computers are predictable, or we know how to make them behave or misbehave, whereas for me, people are not, and that's why it's interesting for me. So I want to focus on this. So who can be our target? Well, they can look like this. If anyone has security guards like this, please let me know, because I would like to do an engagement there. They are not really looking like this. Sometimes it can get to this, but most of the time it looks like more like this. Other targets that I get in touch with are more office workers, that they usually look very, very busy, so no one really cares. And when you ask if you can sit down or take a laptop that's next to them, sure, no problem. Or there is no target, like this is 2 months back. So it was a big building with many companies, and the guy just was not there. And if you look a little bit in detail, which you can't probably see, there is a badge on a table. So what I do, I stole it. And so I was going through, there are physical barriers here, and then lifts that are armed with RFID readers. Then I swipe it in, and then I look at the card, and I'm like, it is not my client. So I had to go back and I put it back in that place. But yeah, so what those targets we were talking about, what do they have in common? they are human. Most humans have some bigger, some smaller brain. So I will be talking about more about psychology, because in my first talk I was talking about body language. I'll mention it briefly, but this will be more about psychology. So, mold your target's perception. Reality is objective, but our perception of reality is subjective. What does it mean? Reality is here. I am here. I come, and there is one reality. My target is here. There is one single reality, but we perceive it differently. I come in with my malicious plans in mind, but my target doesn't know it. So what I can do, the perception is like a lens through which we are seeing the reality. So if I play it right, I can manipulate my target. This is from a book from Nick Colenda. So how to mold your target's perception, how to change how they're thinking. It's about activating schema. So it's like associations about Pavlov effect. I'll get back to it later. But it's about like a knots in your brain. So I got into my client's office. There was empty meeting room. I get in, I sit down, and then the receptionist comes. She's like, "Who are you? What you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's really helpful. You are here." And then explained to her that I'm doing IT audit, and I will come back to her. And then when I go back to her desk, I say, "Oh, can I help you with something? I will actually need to be going to different people at different times, looking at their machines." And everyone was being so nice and helpful, and I started last week. So what I've been doing, there are things like helping hand or being nice, being helpful. This is all preparing her to be in the schema that's connecting her knots in her brain to be nice to me, to be helpful. So anchoring is a principle where you have something, you give your target something to anchor to compare to. So for me it was, I have to do this work, so this is what she will compare it to. Then I tell her, as a decoy effect, there will be like something very exaggerated. So it will be, I would say, I will have to go into different offices, and I will have to come back every time for like a card, for a badge. And then she's like, she's still comparing it to my anchor. Then I am, in the meantime, I will say, or you can just give me all pass. And then I straight go into the door interface technique where I would be, or I can call my manager. And because my manager, what I told her before, is a big head of IT. So for her is the door interface technique. It's like, oh, okay, or I'm gonna do this, which she doesn't really want to do. What I didn't know was like, she was like, oh, you already talked to him? He's here. And I'm like, what? I didn't. So my OSINT was saying that he's in a different office. He was not meant to be there. So for me, it was a surprise. So I had to like act really, really quickly. I'm like, yeah, I already spoke to him, but I think he's in a meeting. So if I will have to call him because of you, you will be in trouble. So it's the anchoring, the decoy effect, and then door interface technique, which I will later talk about, but it will make her react. I got the all pass, of course. But what I like to say, it's never foolproof, all these things. There is a research behind it. But the research, what it means is just average on some group of people. So no one is the same. You have to count with the fact that everyone is different. So power of expectations. Pavlov effect. It's about associations. Here, probably everyone knows what Pavlov effect is, right? It's about the drooling dogs that drool when the door gets open. Not really. It's not. The Pavlov realized that he doesn't even have to have the food. It's just reflex of opening the door, and the dog starts salivating. I don't want to say that my clients are salivating when I get into the door, but it's more about association. So if a girl, blonde, comes into the door, who would expect me to be a penetration tester testing the company? Or I also, of course, you have to modify it. So if it's a woman, if I wear mascara, I just smudge it under my eyes, so I look a little tired. Which again, there are different psychology effects, but I modified. Or if it's a man, I try to make myself look a little bit more attractive. So it's you have to find your way how you're going to be dressed, so you can do both things, depending on your target. As I was saying, I will talk a little bit about the body language, because it helps reading what my targets are thinking, and then again modify my behavior or what I'm saying. So talking about the body language, I would start talking a little bit about the triumph of the brain. So there are 3 brains. The oldest one, the reptilian, was when we were chasing mammoths, whatever it was, when that brain is deciding, is it a threat? Are we in a danger? Then the reaction comes through the limbic brain. That's the one that's going to decide what you're going to do with what your reptilian brain decided to do. Part of the limbic system is amygdala, that I will talk about later. And then you have the lying brain, or thinking brain, the new brain, the neocortex that comes after. He's the one that maybe these days you feel like there's some danger. What's the danger? You look around, yeah, there's no lion. It's maybe just I don't know, your favorite Big Mac is sold out. So, it thinks a little bit. So the 3 reflexes that we are seeing from the limbic brain are fight. I don't fight my customers normally, and I don't recommend to anyone else. I don't try to make them fight. And there is a 3rd one, which if you look at the big cats, when they are trying to attack maybe like antelope, what does the antelope do when they're trying to reach her? It usually, and it's a new, they added it only in 2002, it's freeze. So that's what it does. So all of these 3 are causing something that's called pacifying behaviors. Pacifying behaviors are way of your brains trying to soothe your body. So it's usually some sort of touching yourself. It's trying to release the endorphins to calm you down because you're feeling somehow uncomfortable. And these are the behaviors that I'm looking in my targets, because then it's going to tell me more. And if you want to know more about the body language, there is the first talk that I did for B-Sides Manchester. Other behaviors I'm looking for, like a mirroring, so which means that the client trusts me. So, for example, I was on my last one. I came into the office. Well, I was already in office. The guy, he was smiling, but then when I was walking around trying to look into things, he was like, "So what are you doing here?" So I told him my pretext, and I was like, okay, now he's like typing on computer. Does it mean that he's actually sending an email to someone and being suspicious or not? So what I did, I sat down in not far from him, and I would start just turning on my chair, and I was talking to him. His family name was Simpson, so I was talking about Simpsons, and all of a sudden he started to move in the same way. So for me it was like, it's okay, green light. So I then stood up, and because they had knock control, so then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try to plug it into printers, and since he trusts me, like, yeah, I got on a network. So what would you which part of the body would you look at when you're trying to read someone? Face, hands, feet. Feet are the most honest part of our body, because, and as it goes up, we are losing the honesty. So face is actually the most lying part of our body. Because think about it, since you're a little kid, your mom tells you, oh, don't do this face, or look like you're actually having fun. I know you hate your aunt, Gertruda, whatever. So like so face is the most lying one because we're sort of managing it the most. Again, look for clusters of behaviors, because it could be that someone is tapping their feet, but it could be medical condition or something that they are used to. So I would look. It was a guy that looked really, really nervous, and I thought that it was one of the bodyguards, and I thought, security guards, and I thought he's being suspicious. But then I realized it's just his normal way of he just taps his foot. Or what's important is the direction of your feet. So I had a security guard who he knew that I didn't belong there because I later learned he knew all 800 people in the building, and so he was like, "You visiting?" And I'm like, I read his face, so like his eyebrows went downwards and upwards. So that means like first like. He knew that I didn't belong. So I was like, I'm looking at him, and I first look at the feet. I pretend that I'm looking for something in my pocket, and his feet were like L, which was, I have to talk to you, but I want to get away. So I just made a step towards him, which I breached his personal space, which made him even more nervous. And then it was just questions like, he was like, so when you work here? I said, yeah, I started on Friday, like you didn't see me. So he was like, obviously he felt like he failed, something went wrong. And so he didn't want to give me any more questions, so the last question was just to see my badge. That it was just a piece of paper in a badge holder. So I just waved it really quickly and was like, go. He didn't want to talk to me anymore. Yeah, so face lies the most. So everyone knows the macro and micro expressions. So the macro ones are the ones that are lasting long. These are the lying ones, most likely. Micro expressions are at 1/25th of a second. It's like a data leak over your face. So, and that's the real data. So and it's universal. Like Paul Ekman that studies it. I'm not sure if anyone's seen the Lie to Me TV series. Yeah. So that's based on him, and so he really studies it. He does. I took one of his courses. So he went to tribes that were completely isolated, and the micro expressions are still the same. Or a blind kid. So this is really universal. This is really good thing to learn. You can see there are 7 basic ones. I didn't input the happiness because just pirate. So how do I set my targets, attitude, and behavior? There is something about people needing to maintain the same attitude and behavior. It's like someone. It was like the receptionist. I made her being nice to me. I told her how nice she is and how helpful she is. She doesn't want to turn around and be like, no, I'm not going to give you the access badge. So that's people feel the need to maintain the constant attitudes and behaviors. There is something called cognitive dissonance, where when you're feeling internally different to how your body behaves, your body is trying to sort of sync your behavior. So it could be, let's say, what I do. I usually come to the receptionist, and I either tell her, "Oh, there is something on your shirt," and she looks down and up, which is like a yes, it's a positive. I'm already molding her perception. I'm already making her being even more positive, being more likely to give me that all access. There is a great talk by Chris Hanagi who says that just the making the facial expression can cause the emotion. If you have time, have a look at it. He's actually testing it on people. Just make the facial expression of fear, and there is actually, you will see something back of your mind. It's kind of cool. So how to set attitude of being positive just by asking? Well, I love it here because in England everyone is so polite. No one ever is gonna tell you that they suck and that they hate it, whatever. So just by asking, you just ask how they are doing. Great, being positive, nice. Gonna give you the card. So talking about applying the pressure. So social rejection and physical pain actually share the same circuitry in the brain. So how I use it, it's again the being nice. You're such a nice person. That lady doesn't want to be socially rejected, being like, I would say her, but you were so nice to me, what happened to you? So instead of, so I am again pushing her towards where I want her to be. So norm of reciprocity, it's when someone does something nice for us, we feel the pressure to do something nice for him. So like I either leave doors open, so a best place to go is where people smoke. It's awesome because people usually just sharing rumors and some juicy stuff, and you get to talk to them. And then I make sure to be like one step forward to actually hold them the door, and then they can repay me by swiping me into their building. What actually happened, I think it was a couple months back. I went to the place where they were smoking. There were like 5 of them, but I don't really smoke. I just have fake vape, and of course I didn't charge it. And I'm going there and I'm pressing, and I'm like, shit. Like what do I do? And then everybody is looking at me, and it was cold. I think it was February, and I'm like, it's so cold that thing is not working. The lady next to me took out a box of packet of cigarettes. She's like, do you want one? I smoked after 15 years. So yeah, so motivation through limitation. That's what I was talking about with the receptionist, with me telling her, I'm gonna call my manager and it's gonna cause an issue. It made her react at that moment. So implicit egotism, so we like ourselves, even if we don't like to say we do. There is accidental similarity, which is, you know, like we're twinsies, we do the same thing, and I'm using the us and we, so we belong in the same group. So again, that person is more likely to comply with whatever my request is. It could be, the last time it was like, oh God, she has such an awful t-shirt, but I was like, it's so nice, I have the same at home. She's like, oh really? I'm like, yeah, no, but it worked. So repeated exposure. I heard people saying that they go hide in the toilets. Don't. Just walk around. One of my favorite pretexts, no, I mean, don't be like Mr. Bean, please, but behave normally. But what I really like to do, one of my favorite pretexts is just to pretend I'm an IT auditor, which makes you go around. You really talk to each and every one of them, and others see you talking to others, and that makes you more believable. And then you just, at some point, you're talking to the 5th person, and you're like, can I take their laptop? Like, I'm from IT, I need to repair it. Yeah, sure. So processing fluency. So it's, again, I need to understand how my target is thinking. So I need to either use IT lingo and completely confuse them, or be like, I'm blonde, I don't do computers. And it works. Gradual changes, again, as I'm flowing through the office, I can change from being the blonde girl to being a professional IT support. I just need to do it gradually. As I was saying, there are 2 different types of processing. So there is heuristic and systematic. So it's more like, the systematic is like, there was a girl, she obviously was there like very short time. So she was like, let me have a look at this. And then she was like going really like into detail about like all the information that I was giving. So I need to push her towards more of the heuristic that's more like, yeah, let's get it done. Someone's been working there for 20 years, so they want to get it done with pretty fast. And I used the IT lingo to sort of lose her interest in what I was saying. Bribe your target. Best power form of incentive is just being nice, saying nice things. It's free, works the best. I said I'll talk about the amygdala. So that's if you will use everything that I was saying or the bribing really fast. Amygdala, if you remember, that's part of the limbic system. So that's the one where the reptilian brain gives you the reaction that you need to do. This is before the neocortex, the new brain, which is like you're pretty much man in the middling the whole brain. And this is a talk from Christopher Hanage that I really, really recommend. So, what you can do if you want to get into social engineering, I built an alter ego. I built Grace. It helped me at the beginning to start getting used to being different, do different things, and right now I'm more used to like flow into different personalities that I need to. Reach out to social engineers, read people. There are awesome, I really love on YouTube shows that are like a blind dates. So when they take the blinders off and people look at each other for the first time, you can see the face data leaks. And then usually they are talking later about if it was true or not, or if how they felt about the person at the beginning and towards the end. Books, for this talk, I used mainly the method of persuasion from Nicolenda, partially the influence from Cialdini. The last talk, I used lots of body language from Joe Navarro, and I'm actually going through face reading because face reading in Chinese, it tells you about all your wrinkles and what does it mean, and it's really, really awesome because when someone is smiling their whole life, the wrinkles going to be in place and it tells you how the person is. I was talking about Paul Ekman, so you can actually go study his courses as well. It's a little pricey, but it's definitely worth it. So what you can do to protect your company against me? Get tested. Definitely, it will help you understand what's your threat landscape, what are your weaknesses, how you should tailor your campaign for your employees and users at your company. Regular awareness sessions, but the engaging ones, not the email every day, don't tailgate, don't do this, don't do that. At ShareCloud, what we do, we go into site, and I have my social engineering handbag, but it has all the different colors of the lanyards, and we bring lockpicks so people see how actually easy it is to pick a lock. And then my other advice, make it personal. Make it personal about their home life, because then it will make them understand how fragile it is and what are the good cybersecurity practices, and it then becomes reflex that you can use at work. Empower your employees. So it's not like you're SOC, you're the police. No, they are part of your team. They need to feel empowered when someone try to tailgate, that they will turn around and ask who they are and if they have card. It's simple as that. As I was saying, so Meizu is a new project where currently we are researching a lot around RFID. We actually have a talk in Copenhagen with Chrissy next week, but you can read more at the blog. Questions?
Could you bring the last slide back, please?
Okay. Okay, so you find me here, and you find us with Chrissy as Meizu at our this is our blog, and we have YouTube channel where we're uploaded, and we are uploading some videos from our research right now with Proxmark and around RFID. That's it.
Thank you very much. So we're gonna have maybe 2-3 minutes to swap the places with the presenters. Oh, there was a question. Sorry.
Caught? You mean like really, really get caught, or like get caught and then I talk my way out of it? Because that's like what I do when I'm going on site. You have, I was talking about the get out of jail free card, which is pretty much saying she's doing here what she's doing and it's okay. I bring my fake one. So that's what I usually do. When they try to stop me, I just lie again and get out of it. But I got caught once where it was really funny. So it was a client, and we got made special badges, and they had a barcode on them. And then we got caught. The receptionist, she would have let us go, but just by coincidence, another one was walking past, and she's like, she was not sure, and he sensed it, so he stopped, and he's like, "What you're doing here?" And we were pretext. And then he's like, "Can you show me your badge?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's not a badge that we have here." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a new one. It's coming. We are rolling out new badges. It's coming next week." Not knowing I'm talking to the guy who designs the badges for the company. So yeah, that happens. But I mean, I don't do it not to get caught. I do it to help the customers. So I try to test them. Even the fake get out of jail free card, it's worded in a really strange way, and it's asking you to do like a stay covert. So like if someone it also has the number that you're meant to call. It's my number. So if the person's gonna call, they will call me, and I will say, "Okay, you done well. You done everything that you had to." But yeah, it's usually the person that they are meant to be calling is like a CEO, so they don't really want to do it when it's just receptionist. But yeah.
Thank you very much. So yes, we're gonna have 4 minutes to swap the presenters. We're gonna have a last talk. talking about DevSecOps and cloud. Thank you.
So, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you can hear me? Cool. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for staying here late-ish. Thanks to the Many Hat Club to host this, to organize this. So let me challenge you and let me start with a question. Who thinks security is hard? Come on. More? Okay, now we're talking. Who has done some cloud and think cloud is exciting? Just that? Okay, cool. Then you're in the right place. So let me crack on. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the role of a security architect, the challenge that we're facing in cloud transformation, traditional versus cloud, what we learn as Camelot, a little bit about other experience, and hopefully you can take something away with you or criticize it. So we're going to try to keep the talk a little bit dynamic. We're going to break here and there, ask some questions, and then at the very end do a wrap-up session for more questions. So without further ado, a little bit about what we're going to talk tonight. So security architecture, traditional versus the exciting cloud. What's different about the cloud versus the traditional world? What's exciting, what's challenging, especially for the security architect? A little bit about, David is going to talk a little bit about Camelot, what we're doing there, why we are excited about working there, and a little bit about our journey, different views about same organization, different approach, different challenge. And then David is going to talk a little bit more about how to sell security architecture to upper management, so our value, what we're doing, what worked for us, what didn't, and then some few and key takeaways, wrap up with some questions. So, a little bit about me. I'm a security architect at Camelot, working under David, fantastic guy. David, a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm David. I look after security at Camelot. My background is Royal Holloway. I saw some Royal Holloway students in the room. Hello. I then did some stuff with government. I then joined Camelot in about 2015. We're talking about the social engineering. I socially engineered the domain admin password for Camelot on my first day. By the end of the week, I had root access to the Unix systems, and I didn't even break open Nmap. Obviously, a lot's changed since then, and I'd like to think that couldn't happen now. Don't test me. That's a bit about me.
We're not going to share the office location, right? So, what is a security architect? Who knows who is a security architect? What does a security architect do? Anyone? Anyone deal with this kind of beast? Go on. Sorry? Yeah. So
more designing also workflows, how they work towards it instead of compromising it.
cool.
Stacks for monitoring security.
Cool. Yes, all of that, and I would say probably a security architect is somebody that take a vision, takes somebody's vague idea and try to stick to it, sorry. Stick is probably the wrong word to say, but anyway. Try to talk a little bit to engineer and try to maintain that vision throughout one or more projects. So that worked really, really well in traditional world where we knew what we were doing, we had defined patterns, we knew where we were. Now take that view into the cloud where everything is changing, everything is fast, and probably we're all dealing with something that we don't really know very well, how it's structured, how to deal with it. Probably just making up as we go, right? Or at least I think so. So what's our role? I think our role still stands as taking a vision, trying to apply the same vision to multiple projects. We can still do things in very, very different way. We have potentially blueprint pattern already published, but they don't apply exactly all the time to what we want to do. Sometimes they do. We can stick a template, spin it up, and somebody can actually do that without our security knowledge. They go around and ask the DevOps, can you spin this stuff for me? And then we discover it later. That's the good and the bad of the cloud, I guess. So let me try. Who knows about the cloud, first of all? Cool. What is the cloud? That's a cloud.
Someone else's computer with an API in front of it so you can use it as much of it as little as you
Thank you. You know, it comes with different names. Very pretty names. David, did you know?
What are the different types of clouds you can?
So you have product as a service, fantastic. One very nice level of abstraction above the data center. Software as a service, another level of abstraction. Infrastructure as a service, something we probably are used to, traditional data center. David, did you know the cloud comes in different colors? Yeah, it comes in traditional white, traditional data center white. It comes in fantastic Amazon orange. Oh, somebody said it. Fantastic Microsoft Azure blue. Or also more recent, Oracle red. So jokes aside, I think we have different model of the cloud, but ultimately, as the gentleman said, is somebody else's computer with different level of abstraction. So we still deal with it in possibly similar way. Sorry for standing in front of it. We deal with it in similar way, but then we have this level of abstraction. So we need to understand, we need to do our due diligence to understand who does what in infrastructure as a service, product as a service, software as a service, identity as a service, or whatever you want as a service. It's just delegation of responsibility. Who does what you can change. Try to patch your software as a service, or try to apply your patching schedule in a software as a service. How are you going to do it? Try to convince Salesforce to do that. The good part is that, go ahead.
The PWS, is it platform as a service or product?
Product as a service, thank you.
Usually stands for platform.
Platform, product, whatever. The name's going to change. It's just sales name. It's just level of abstraction. Understand what that level of abstraction means, what you are in control, what you are delegate to do, and what your cloud provider is delegated to do, what their responsibility are. Not because it's somebody else's computer, probably they're going to look after the security in the same way, possibly better, possibly worse. Just understand what it is and what's your risk. The good part is that it's scalable, fast moving, click, 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 and deploy. Cool. Same applies sometimes with control. So you can apply traditional control to the cloud, stick your firewall in there, do the peering, do all the stuff that you had to do. Sometimes can be good pattern. Sometimes can be clunky. So why, and costly. So why not use maybe what the cloud provider offer? Maybe they're more integrated. So understand what's the offering, understand what you can plug in, plug out, and what you can leverage. Any other question about this? Doubt? Things you tried, things you poked, things you broke. No? You don't poke that much the cloud, do you?
You don't get is essentially a PCAP feed from anything.
Sorry?
You don't get PCAP feed from the network.
No.
It's annoying.
You can get close to it on Amazon sometimes. You don't get as close to tapping the network, probably not.
The only one who does anything like raw tap right now seems to be Azure as of last month, and the others are still catching up, but you can't get raw PCAP from anywhere.
No, fair enough. There is a level of abstraction. There is a level of you can look up to this level, But there is also cool automation stuff, and you get very cool logging on, for example, the API calls that in a traditional data center you will probably need to build. So what are the challenges of a security architect? Well, we talked a little bit about it. We have Dave down there that has to deal with still the traditional data center world, the PC, the human problem. And then somebody comes in the room and say, I have a very cool idea, let's go to the cloud. And Dave is still the same Dave there. He still has to deal with the same bunch and the same amount of problem, plus all the new problem of the cloud, right? He needs to go out, learn, understand what it is, possibly the same thing, but possibly somebody say, software as a service, very cool, let's use it, let's stick to it. Here's my credit card, buy it. And now he has to deal with it. And then somebody else comes with another software as a service, and he has to learn it, and he has to secure it, and probably can't catch up because he's still the same guy. And then you want to expand his team. And there are that many talent available at the moment because we're still learning. And if somebody just shows up and say, I have 10 years of experience in the cloud, probably they're lying. Because we're still making it up. We're still learning. It's not that old. I mean, it's the same old concept, but we're still learning because the technology is changing on a yearly basis. As I say, the tech stack is constantly changing. They're introducing innovation. They're publishing and decommissioning service. Azure, AWS, they do every year. They offer tons of service, tons of level of abstraction. They cut and slice the infrastructure in different way to make it as usable and as buy, use, sell, destroy as possible. So I'm going to pass the microphone. David? And the clicker.
Hello. So in answer to your question, the closest, so we use AWS in Camelot, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The closest we've got is using guard duty on AWS to get a lot of flow data in a bit more richer format. Obviously, it's not the same as a PCAP, right? But it's the closest we've got. So I'm going to talk about Camelot's journey into largely AWS rather than any sort of SaaS or PaaS services we use. But before that, I'll just scoot through what we do at Camelot. So we run the UK National Lottery. We also run some other lotteries and provide some code for other lotteries. In the National Lottery, we have quite a large digital channel, which 11 million people in the UK play lottery games, but we also have quite a large retail network, so we have all the challenges of retail point-of-sale devices that are unprotected out in the wild and integrations with other people's point-of-sale devices in places like Tesco, as you can see there. A lot of that's backhauled through VSAT, so that's been fun to play with. VSAT security is quite unique. I should say. Yeah, maybe it's a politically correct thing to do. And we also do a lot of investigations, not just into cyber attack, but into insider threat, into fraud in retail, and all of those kind of things. And we run a whole load of lottery draws. So some draws, some are scratch cards, some are instant win games, but we run about 500 draws a year. Tonight it was a Euro Millions draw and a Thunderball draw, which has just completed. No one won. Statistically, it's hard to win the lottery, right? But that's all good. And then we have we're a regulated business, and I'll talk about that in a bit. That makes it a bit more difficult for us. We can't do CI/CD because talking to the regulator about clouds kind of blows their mind. Some stuff that we have to run to physical data centers. Sometimes it doesn't make sense because we've got the data centers to stick stuff in the cloud because we're paying for the electricity and the air conditioning and all that kind of stuff anyway. We've got spare rack space. But sometimes it totally does make sense to put stuff in the cloud, and I'll talk a bit about that too. So this is the security team when we all said we'd go down to InfoSec, but spent most of the day at the pub. That's the pub. And we compared freebies and drunk beer. So the team split into different sections. So we do a lot of stuff in-house, which makes it quite a fun place to work. So we've got a security architecture function. Francesca works there. Hugo also works in the architecture team and some others. And that does the security architecture thing, right? And I call them the gatekeepers to production. Making sure all the changes are designed in a secure way. Then we have an in-house security operations team. split between Liverpool, or I should say Knowsley, so sometimes get upset, it's kind of halfway between Liverpool and Manchester. Do like first line security operations 24/7, and then a second and third line team in Watford. And they do the traditional monitoring and investigations thing, the insider threat thing. There's a mini red team within the SOC, mainly to test the blue team, not really to test the technology, to make sure we're making the right judgment calls on the basis that if you only see bad stuff when bad stuff happens, you're not going to respond to it well, right? So you should see bad stuff all the time. And then by the time it's really bad, and it's genuinely bad, and it's not the red team, you can respond to it in a good way. So that's what we do. And then we've got a risk and compliance team with Kira, who's somewhere in the room, Becky, who's on the live stream. Hi, Becky. And some others, and they look after a lot of the regulatory stuff that we have to do, the standards we have to comply with, the security awareness, the third-party risk management, all those kind of things. So that's how we kind of split it up at Camelot. But then we had the trouble of what we're going to do with AWS, right? So, and how we're going to, for all of those three areas, we needed to skill up as a team and understand how that was going to change what was going on. So our journey with AWS started back in early 2016, and we've actually got two, I said on the last slide, we've got 2 AWS environments. We've got about 20 accounts, about 10 production, 10 dev and test in one account. And then we've got about 15 accounts in the other ones. The other ones mainly are software engineering development environment, and the other ones kind of like the more regulated bit. And they started in different ways. So the software engineering one started, originally it was a hosted data center. They'd almost finished their virtualization journey. And obviously, like all good anything IT project related, you never quite finished it before I started the next thing. So they were only about 20 different servers off finishing their virtualization journey before they didn't finish their last 20 servers and jumped into AWS, which was great. And they did what all engineering teams do. They went and found some people that understood AWS, got them in the team, taught everyone else, and just experimented. And that was fine because it was engineering. In the kind of more regulated business, we were a bit more slow-paced with that. So we actually started in Azure, and we created a kind of safe way to fail app. It was an app for our retail sales team. So the guys that went out to those 50,000 retailers that I talked about before, and gave them information on like the sales for the retailer so they could talk to them about it and that kind of thing. And we were almost committed to Azure in early 2016. And the reason we were going to go down the Azure route because was in the AWS terms and conditions, they weren't loving the whole gambling thing. And whilst we don't necessarily consider ourselves as gambling, we didn't really want to make a multi-million-pound investment and then AWS just switch it off. So that'd been a bit awkward conversation to have. So, and so we were literally like more than the 11th hour, AWS changed their terms and conditions. And they did it not because we did anything clever. They did it because our lead database administrator lived next door to the VP of the person responsible for that kind of stuff in AWS. And they had a conversation. And we got it changed, which was very lucky on our part. Because we wanted to go AWS, so we did. Because they changed terms and conditions. And then the first thing we built out around that time, we got a new chief data officer. So obviously we had to do some big data thing. So we built that out for the chief data officer very slowly. We failed a few times. We put in services that really should never have been platformed in the cloud because they weren't designed for the cloud, and they just blatantly were never going to work in the cloud. But we tried to do it anyway because we thought we knew better, but we didn't, and it didn't work. So then we tried again, and it was very much a test and learn type approach. With security, we got in there first, so we knew we were going to the cloud. We knew that was going to be a little bit uncomfortable for us because we weren't ready. We weren't ready across any of what we did. So we thought, well, if we get in there first and influence and guide the journey, that's going to work. So we built up some services. Like we chose to tackle the basics and the foundations first while we were ahead of the curve. So we decided 3 things: identity access management, patching, and monitoring. Right? If you're going to do just a few things in security, if you get those 3 right, then kind of some way to something useful. So for monitoring, we chose Greylog. For those of you who haven't used Greylog, I'd recommend it. It's open source Splunk, basically. It's a bit like Elk, but slightly more useful for a security use case. We already used it on premise. Greylog's whole mission statement is to be as good as Splunk, but for never more than a third of the price. Although a lot of people use it open source, we pay for it because I've got a thing about if you're a business and you don't support open source, it's not going to work. And then at least we were collecting the data, right? Then you've got something useful to work on. So we did that. We used CyberArk for our privileged account management. We tried using that in AWS. That didn't work so well for us, mainly because we didn't design it out properly and do the architecture up front, so we took that out. But we'd already used it on premise, so we just thought we could extend it out. That didn't work. And for patching, we got overexcited ourselves and we thought, you know what, really good way to do patching in AWS, let's use the things that AWS are good at. We'll just kill all the instances every 24 hours and and birth them again. That's going to be great, right? But we didn't have the skills to write the Terraform or the Ansible. It didn't work. Especially when we started playing with Hadoop, we just corrupted everything. Then we went back to the basics of at least, well, let's get the patching done a little bit, and then that can be something that we leave on Jira to, improve once we can do the basics properly. But it was cool because we learned and we were trying new things as we went, and that's kind of how the journey's evolved. So obviously part of that journey was getting the buy-in of everyone, and that was kind of my job to make sure that happened. And there wasn't one single way of doing that. If you go and speak to a meeting, you're not really speaking to a meeting of 6 people, right? You're speaking to 6 individuals in that meeting. And you have to nail that. And it was a bit like that with the security of AWS. You can't go to a DevOps team and say, these are all the things that I want. It's not really going to work. You have to think about what they need. So we did things like prioritize some of the things that they needed first. So one of the things that we knew they were going to need was a code repository and pretty easy access to it. So we prioritized making sure we sorted that before some of the identity and access management things that we wanted to sort to build that relationship. And a lot of it was about building relationships with different stakeholder communities. One of the things we did that we were kind of guided down the path was we had a SaaS application that the business wanted to use. And we tried to do all the normal things that you might do to influence someone. So we assessed it against the Cloud Security Alliance controls matrix, and there's reds everywhere, so don't do that. But they still really wanted to use it, so we pen tested it, and we had to call time on the pen test at the point that the guys told me that they were just about to access their other clients' data, and I was like, that's illegal, don't do that. That's enough to influence, surely that's enough to influence business, and then they killed it, and we re-platformed it in our AWS environment. But that story still talked about in Camelot as giving us the ability to influence the decisions that get made about what goes into the cloud and what's a sensible cloud investment and what actually maybe not so much.
Thank you.
You said something about not being able to run effective CI and CD because you're a regulated business. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make sense to me either, but we do CI, right? But CD, the regulator's not ready.
I've sold continuous delivery to the FCA a couple of times now.
So the FCA is a more mature regulator than perhaps other regulators.
It's just amazing that the others just aren't getting it.
It will come, right? It will come. But it's not just in the UK, across the lottery and gaming sector worldwide, they're not in that place yet, right? And it will come through education and time, but they're not there. You've got to remember certainly the lottery sector works on 10-year life cycles. Like licenses come up to operate once every 10 years, so things are quite slow moving.
There's the fact that UK GC is okay with cloud. Almost everyone else is giddy, and if you go to say Portugal, Sweden, Denmark, you're up in the world of pain. And if you have to run an RNG, you have to run a hybrid cloud no matter what you do, because no regulator is willing to approve RNG running on virtual hardware. They want to have that on-prem somewhere, then you just have VPNs.
Yeah, sure. And all the RNG standards for the sector are predicated on the fact you're not running the RNG in the cloud. They're predicated if you read a lot of the RNG standards, there's all the cryptographic stuff you would expect, right? And whether you're taking particles from the sun or all that kind of stuff as an entry source or whatever you're doing, and then half of it's all about physical security. So how do you prove that you've done that when you can give like an attestation of compliance from Amazon, but that's not really going to cut it from a regulator's point of view when it's a tech box, right? Right, so yeah. And that's the ironic thing, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Or PCI and the famous story about the firewall and trying to convince people that ACL are actually based on firewall. Anyway, funny joke with AWS guys. That has to sell that to a lot of regulated business, especially on PCI. Anyway, going back, what do we do then as cloud architect? We just copy and paste template inside the cloud. Well, sometimes we get away with it. We leverage on Blueprint. We try to apply patterns and build patterns for us. Like David says, Greylog, fantastic. We build a pattern on it from a project. And then we apply the same pattern to all the other projects, making sure that we have standards. Access control, another pattern that we build. Third-party remote access, another pattern that we build. Not reinvented. We base it on best practice and recommendation that we go find, adapt it to our case, what will work for us, what didn't, and apply to multiple projects. And in that way, we slowly but surely modify the posture of probably a rushed environment, sticking to standards. The other problem having a lot of template lying around is that people just go around and say, can you actually spin up this service? And we know it at the very end of the queue. That we have a full stack of stuff that we have to go there, pen test, have the finding, and sometimes the finding are so bad, as David says, that we have to go back and rebuild the whole thing and say, why didn't you involve us at the very beginning? So that's traditional challenge that we always had. Cloud just made the thing much faster, service much faster, and hence we have to catch up much faster. We have different technologies, so we have to learn much faster to fix things, to build blueprint, using stuff, open, closed, whatever, fast. We have different patterns. Sometimes, though we're lucky, we just build another data center somewhere, we can reapply the same pattern, stick to it, and go and move forward. But the key baseline thing is actually learning about dealing with this fast change. Not to stop the business. So, let me take you on a journey of a perfect world where a company wanted to move to the cloud and had all the time in the world. We all have the architect for all the domains that we want. We have the business that has a vision and understands where you want to go. Specify all the requirements. We sit in a room. We architect it. We architect the cloud in the way we want, in the way the business wants. We build a set of principles. We build a set of requirements. Then we hand it over, all well documented, to the project and to the operation, and then start building and start breaking stuff eventually. Now let me bring you back to reality. Half of the organization, or the majority of the organization, doesn't have that leisure and that time. So probably they'll move to the cloud very, very quickly and don't spend time in building a strong foundation, a strong architecture. Sometimes you get away to actually convincing them of the value of the foundation, of building a structure, understanding what you want to do and how to secure it, so that the end project that go there and spin stuff, maybe we build enough automation or enough logging that we detect it and stop it before our bucket is exposed to the public with our customer information on it, or things like that. So we build monitoring and alerting. So those are all use cases that made sense and that actually build a success story. A strong foundation, monitoring, alerting, automation, having a strong training plan, for the people in your organization, not just in security, but also in other areas, because they all have to catch up with the cloud. And you don't find that many talents, so it's better if you train your own people. They know what you are doing. Probably you do the same thing in the cloud in a slightly different way. So example of where it didn't work or where it failed to certain degrees of brown and badly. Having a weak foundation, not having a plan, not having the management involved in this cloud transformation, so they move rapidly and fast and they don't understand why you want to take time to actually understand what you're trying to do. Having weak process, not having monitoring and alerting. The cloud is a different beast. You could get attacked in a different way. You could have just somebody spinning up IAM service and IAM users and then start spinning up service. And if you don't monitor if your IAM service gets, if you have new users, you're never going to notice if somebody has created a new user on your account, right? Or if somebody has just stick a template that actually does something in the back and you don't know it. Or not having a plan for hiring. You don't find talent that quickly on the cloud, right? So if you just move to the cloud and nobody knows how to deal with it, what do you do? So least but not last, incident management in the cloud. It just, again, linking to the monitoring, linking to what we did with Greylog is a great example of you could potentially reapply the same thing you do on-prem, but it's even more important on the cloud because it's a different beast. It's automated. You have API interaction. You have automatic deployment. You have different way of dealing things. You don't have a root account on your whole data center. Well, guess what? In the cloud, you do. And you have to monitor that account. Actually, you don't use that account for anything. And you can't just work. You can't just pull cable in the cloud. You can't tap the cloud. You can't tap your machine. You can't do a pickup. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to David for wrap up and key takeaways. Unless you have questions. I know you're tired enough.
Cool. So the kind of lessons that I've personally learned, and I think we've learned as Camelot are on the screen, you know, clearly one of the advantages of cloud is it makes automation very easy. Don't manually hand crank stuff because you're not getting any advantage from that deployment. Don't have loads of hassle with integrating with third-party products when, if you're starting out, use the native stuff, even if it's not the best that you can get for your use case. The hassle, you can use all the time that you're going to spend trying to sort out the integrations with actually getting to the point where actually you need something that's outgrown the native services that are there. Sort out your skills, right? Don't expect that to just happen. That takes effort and probably requires more planning than any sort of technical deployment you're going to do. And recognise that there is a difference, and for people that don't recognise there's a difference in the business, like take them on that journey with you. Don't let them catch up afterwards. So we've got a short video, which we'll see if we can work, which explains why, you know, when we talk about doing the cloud thing at Camelot, this is, and all the other security stuff we do at Camelot, this is why we do it.
Here's a question. Have you ever thought who you help when you buy one of these? No? Well, let's find the list. From outdoors to indoors, art galleries to stadiums, young and old and injured, veterans, swimmers, cyclists, musicians. So let's get down to the facts. On average, over £30 million goes to good causes each week. That is the equivalent to £2,976 every minute, or £49.60 each second of every day. 510,000 individual grants have been made across the UK, and more than £37 billion has been raised since the National Lottery began way back when Wet 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 dominated the charts.
Cool. So that's why I personally do security at Camelot, and I think why a lot of the team do too, because of all the good that it does. So thank you very much for coming today, for staying until now. If you've got any questions, I don't think we've got that much time, but feel free to ask one if it's burning. 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes, about anything you've heard today.
We can bring up other speakers as well. Can we ask them questions as well? Any questions, anyone?
On the choice of a cloud vendor, if you were to choose a platform today between Amazon, Azure, or Google Cloud, would you still go with Amazon, or would you change your decision?
So we did due diligence between Azure and Amazon, but back in late 2015, early 2016, right? I don't know enough about Azure or GCP to make that call now. I'd have to look again, because I don't feel informed enough to, I mean, I know some of the stuff that I've seen in the press, but that's not really enough to make a call on, if I'm honest.
There's also Alibaba now.
There you go, all over it. Yeah. Definitely get in there with the Chinese. Yes, mate, at the back. Can I give you the numbers for last week? Oh, very good. Actually, I think, what day are we on today? Is it Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah.
Oh, there is a draw tomorrow. You're right. Let's say draw tomorrow. Very good.
For instance, how much import went from security into that cloud platform decision?
Into AWS. So I said, what I said to the executive team was, I genuinely don't care which platform you choose, but choose one and stick to it. However good the others are, only have one, because we're not mature enough or capable enough as an organisation to support more than one. So choose what you like, but only choose one. And however good the next thing that comes along is, you've made a decision and stick to it.
Is that still true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've only got one. Right, and it's still just AWS.
You've got one and on-premise, right?
Yeah, but we're always going to have on-premise until the regulator catches up, right? So that's just the industry we work in. Cool. And anything else? Yes, mate.
I'm just curious, like, what's the biggest challenge that you are tackling now with you and your team?
Right, generally speaking, in the world. Attack surface reduction is always difficult, right? So application security and vulnerability and patch management, they're not sexy as maybe other areas of security. They're the basics, but they're the difficult things, and it's difficult to do those well. So getting the attack surface down as much as possible, making sure we're on the latest versions of things that don't have vulnerabilities, making sure that we've got decent application security practices in the security software engineering team. That's some of the hardest work we do.
Buy time to think. Logging is not a 5-minute job.
Yes, mate.
I've not watched the lottery for a while, but it used to have these big machines to pick the numbers.
Yeah.
Do you ever get them pen tested?
Do we get the draw machines pen tested? They do go through testing. Yes, they go through a lot of testing. We run more test cycles on the machine than we do actual draws. Before every draw, we have to run test cycles. So the security standards around the physical draws, ironically, although they're much harder to rig, I wouldn't rig a physical draw. I'll definitely choose something else. If I was so minded, I'm not, for anyone watching on the live stream or if this goes. That's a hard thing to do, right? Although interesting, the balls have RFID chips in. Any ideas why?
So you can 100% confirm that it's correct?
No, but no, we don't lose one. No, we've actually got loads of ball sets because we're only allowed to use them a certain number of times before we have to get rid of them.
So the numbers come up on the screen quickly.
Yeah, it's for the graphics, right, on the TV. So RFID can read or it can't read. It can't read it wrong, so it populates the graphics quickly, and then all the human has to do is verify that there aren't any missing. Which clearly, if you're on a kind of live TV broadcast with only a 5, 10, 30-second delay or whatever it happens to be, is beneficial rather than putting the numbers in wrong and then getting a big fine. Any other? Yes, mate.
How much do you spend a year babysitting auditors?
Babysitting auditors?
Time-wise.
Too much time. Way too much time. So today, just today, I've spent 3 hours with auditors. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's way too much time. Like, I shouldn't be spending almost half of my day with auditors, right? Because when I'm doing that, I'm not managing risk. But that's what regulated industries are like, right? So that's the job I chose to take. I've got no one to blame but myself. Cool. And anything else? We're good? Good.
So just literally 2 seconds, and then you can. I'm between you and beer, which is never a good place to be. So look, thank you. Oh my God, I'm not going to do that. I project my voice. Thank you everyone for coming tonight, and for our second London meetup. We'll have more meetups, most likely next month now. So we'll have another meetup somewhere in central London, to be confirmed, but I imagine a pretty awesome location. And in December, we'll be hosted by Capital One. Christmas theme, of course, being December. So yeah, between you and Beer, so I just want to say thank you for our awesome speakers today. Jay, Sharka, wherever you are at the back. And our awesome Camelot speakers, David and Francesco. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Of course, thank you to Pizza on our audio-visual and also our streaming, so hiding in the background there. Thank you for that. For Meadow, yes. That one's memed me, so unfortunately there's no competition this week. I'm really gutted about that one as well. If anyone's got a hat, anyone got a hat? There you go, we've got a winner. There you go. He's won. He's won this week, right? No, we're going to do a proper competition next one. Actually, hang on, we've got 2 hats here. Anyone else got any hats? I stole a hat when I was doing a conference, so I could potentially win. I stole a hat from. Oh, hang on, we got hats. We actually have got. Hang on a second. That's not really a hat. It's a bobble hats. But it counts. No, we'll definitely do a competition next time because no one actually memes me, which is fine. I'm okay with that, actually, for once. Thank you to Meadow for being an awesome host, and also Toffee for doing all the other stuff she's doing in the corner there with the camera and making sure everything looks awesome. So thank you for joining us, Many Hats Club. If you haven't joined our community, it's on Discord. So we have like podcast talks and all this kind of great stuff and details around what we're doing as a community. About 3,500 members now or something like that. And of course, you can catch our podcasts on the manyhats.club. I had some slides, but everyone is literally slided out, I think. So we're going to go to the pub. While people clear up here, we'll probably just go to the really awesome, really modern pub called the Savoy. If you've not seen it, it's amazing. It's really modern craft beer, I believe, and friendly company. Then we'll probably go to a much better bar 10 minutes down the road. So if anyone wants to go around there and crowd and social engineer people or do what you wanted to do, that's the place to go. And then after that, we'll reconvene and we'll come and join you to a much better bar, literally 5 minutes walk down the road. So thank you, everyone, and we'll definitely see you next time. Thank you.